Hi everybody and welcome to another Wolves Fancast episode of GTA Fancast with me, Gully. Standing here disappointed again with another poor result to look at, a 2-1 defeat to Everton at home last night. We're going to have a look at the game. I don't want to spend too much time on the Everton fixture, as we know the big one is coming up on Saturday and really we need a result, and I'm going to go about trying to show you how I think we can go about making sure we get the 3 points. Now I'm going to kind of just ramble on a little bit about the fixture last night against Everton and flash up some stuff for you to have a look at while I speak, but it's another strange one for me to kind of analyse. I think everything that's going wrong for us at the moment just seems to be little fine margins here and there, and having watched the game back, I was really disappointed last night, just the simple fact that when you think about how Everton's set up with kind of these two false nines in Sigurdsson and Rodriguez, obviously depleted themselves. And I know I totally get the fact that we're missing a lot of key players. The game kind of had draw written all over it at 1-1. There wasn't really too much happening as long as we kind of kept our own back door shut, which we didn't do. But I just think to go out of that game against a team who weren't looking too potent themselves, we obviously didn't have too much in attack, was really, really disappointing. And I think if you just have a look at, both teams' attempts on goal, the number of attempts, the attempts on target, it was a pretty lacklustre effort from both sides. And, a lot of it, again, strange game to analyse. I can't really say there's too much to take from it tactically, just because the first 20 minutes when chances were created and it was a little bit end-to-end was just a bit of a mess, really. Both teams kind of just getting to grips with the game, and then it settled down into a familiar pattern where Wolves kept a lot of the ball, a lot of possession in kind of this first third and second third of the pitch. And if we kind of think about a team from front to back and kind of consider it, how are we doing in each area? Defensively, again, we didn't really give too much away, and in possession of the ball, we're actually really, really good moving the ball up the field through the thirds. Romain Saiss and Cody, obviously players who can play in midfield and have done in the past. Very good, comfortable on the ball. Semedo, Aït-Nouri as well, technical footballers. Regardless of what you think of their defensive capabilities, we actually are pretty good in possession. And when it comes to us getting the ball forward, those guys are very prominent for us, and it's really important that from the back, and it's noticeable compared to how we were playing with the back three. If I think about how we did against Leicester as an example, keeping possession from the first third of the pitch has improved massively, and we look really good for it. Saiss in particular picks out some really nice passes into the midfield. Then you have a look at the midfield. Ruben Neves clearly taking on a lot of responsibility yesterday, scored a goal, had probably our best other couple of efforts on goal as well. You can see he's got that innate kind of leadership skills, and he tries to take a lot of responsibility, which is really good to see. So pleased for him and pleased with his performance yesterday as well. Then Donker brings a lot to the team, didn't necessarily get into the box as much as he normally has done recently, but again, positive presence, stops the other midfield from playing too much. A lot of, what we do well, we actually pick up a lot of loose balls and second balls at the moment. It's not often that we're counter-attacked against. And to be honest, without, thinking about the result, defensively the performance was pretty good from midfield and a defensive point of view. In terms of going forward, this is where we start to kind of fall apart a little bit. And again, granted, caveat that we are missing players, but that forward line of Pedro Neto on the right, Morgan Gibbs-White kind of playing as a false nine again, and Fabio Silva out on the left just felt very kind of muddled and not that well thought through, I don't think. If I just kind of show you the average positions of the team, you find, and Silva's kind of guilty of this in other games as well, he seems to be playing constantly coming towards the ball, and not one of those players was likely to make a run in behind the Everton defence, who were sat deep, to be fair, but at the same time, they just didn't feel like there was a threat going the other way. Gibbs-White, another player, constantly comes towards the ball. Neto as well likes to have it into feet, and then whatever he feels like he wants to do with it, then that's when he kind of has his good moments. But again, not likely to run beyond a player without the ball. And I think we really suffer as a result in the final third when we don't have anybody like that. Someone like a Jota who would have gotten the end of a long ball from Neves, as we've seen a number of times. Just, keeping the defence honest, keeping them on their toes, making sure that they've got something to worry about on their shoulder. And if you kind of have a look at the output of each of the forwards from that game yesterday, I mean, it was pretty pitiful. Neto obviously carrying a lot of the threat himself. He's the main man. He has been the main man for the most part of this season as well. And it's quite obvious to see that he was going to be the one that was going to try and make something happen. And to be fair, he created a decent chance for Fabio Silva. Other than that, he took a knock obviously after about an hour or so, and I think it's a bit of a concern still that he might not be available for Saturday, which is a massive blow considering Traore wasn't around. But that onus on the forwards to take people on is still how we feel like we should be attacking, I think. And Neto, granted, yeah, he'll do it. He can go past people, that kind of thing. Fabio Silva, shoved out onto the left. I don't really understand what the thinking was there. Maybe it was the fact that you didn't want him to get lost in the game based on he's up against Yerry Mina and Michael Keane. But if you look at the Everton back four yesterday, they're all centre-backs by trade. So there's really on a hide into nothing, because he's not going to go and start dribbling past people. He's not going to start, getting in on the back post and attacking the ball with his head or anything like that. So I really don't understand what he was trying to achieve there. And then you've got Gibbs White, who again, he's just another midfielder really. He's nice, he's good on the ball, and he does certain things which are pretty, effective at times, but everything was still in front of the Everton back four, and nothing. It felt like there was almost a bit of a force field around that penalty area again, which, going back to just the fundamentals of how Nuno plays. The first two thirds, I think he's quite comfortable looking after, and he coaches us pretty well. The final third, and thinking about someone like Jose Mourinho, who he's clearly picked a lot of things up from as a coach, he kind of leaves the players to kind of make up their own mind about it. And when you've got players like Adama Traore, Pedro Neto, Raul Jimenez, Diogo Jota, just as really good examples of players that he has had at his disposal, that's fine. What are they going to do? They're going to go past people, they're going to create chances, they're going to wreak havoc. That's normal. But when you've got Morgan Gibbs White, Fabio Silva and Pedro Neto as your forward line, Neto aside, you should have to make a plan to actually hurt teams with that. You need to, because they're not going to do it by themselves. You have to come up with something a little bit more sophisticated. And when we get into the final third, it all just feels a little bit like, well, we'll have a look around, we'll see what's available to us, and we'll see if something comes off. Again, the goal we scored even, lovely piece of play, but it's come off a set piece. I knew he's taken advantage. Really good from him, to be fair. So you can't even necessarily claim that as a good piece of tactical work or a good piece of coaching or anything like that. It was a bit opportunistic, and we took advantage. But beyond that, what was there to show for our attacking efforts? And it's really, really concerning going into a game against quite a poor side in West Brom on Saturday. So yeah, looking at the big one on Saturday, had a lot of confidence going into this one. I think after the Palace game even, that we were looking to kind of turn the corner. Adama Traore was coming into a really good run of form, and all the build-up for me was going to be about how Adama Traore has kind of come to a bit of a, almost a bit of a climax in the way he's playing, right at the right time, going into a Black Country derby, all set up for him to do well. Now, we don't even know if he's going to start. We don't know if Neto's going to be available. We don't know if Bolly's going to be available. Pedence clearly is out. Jimenez, obviously. And there's so many question marks about the team at the moment that it's very difficult to kind of think about how we should go about things. And, it's concerning for all involved, especially when you know that this is a team that is kind of there for the taking. They're really desperate for points, conceding lots of goals despite the fact that they have a new, for all intents and purposes, a solid manager who has a good reputation defensively. But they're a team that is quite clearly not up to the standard of Premier League football. Now, Derby, things kind of go out the window a little bit. But you should still, as the better side with the better players, more resources at our disposal, more kind of experienced almost in terms of Premier League football over the last few seasons, at least. I know West Brom have some players that have got good Premier League experience, but as a collective unit, they just don't look ready for this level. And going into this game, I think I would advocate, as you can see kind of from the shape that I've set us up in, a change to a back three. I think the biggest mistake we made against Everton was going a goal behind. Now, I don't expect West Brom to have as much of a threat as Everton did, even though they play without a striker. And what I will say, people see a back three system as this kind of negative shape where we're not really going to do too much attacking, but I think we can still make sure that we're penning West Brom back into their shape. And from a personnel perspective, I've got a bit of an interesting idea, I think, that might help us do that as well. Now, West Brom set up in kind of a 4-1-4-1 shape in the last few games. I expect a lot of the games we played in this kind of format where they haven't got too much going for them in forward areas. They will look to try and break on us, but without too much quality. And from that perspective, I feel like we can allow the three defenders to kind of have their positions and everybody else is in a position to go and attack, essentially. Now, not being reckless about it, but one of those midfielders should be able to go and fill those spaces, get in those pockets and get on the ball. I think with Cody, Sace, and I'm going to suggest playing Keanu Herber actually as a third centre-half. All good technical footballers, and like I said, they're really important to the way we progress the ball up the field. So when you've got some of these angles, you've got the wing back stretching the play. I think they'll try and play narrow, and Cody will obviously have that ball on out to Semedo, who was excellent for the most part against Everton as well. Showed a real urgency to get forward and has that pace. That means he can get down the flank and get crosses in, which we will have to do at some point. And in the absence of Traore, potentially, he will have to be an outlet like that. And also that ball obviously onto Aït-Nouri as well, who again showed his aptitude in the final third against Everton to get to the byline and put crosses in. So I still think we provide a decent threat from those positions. And Keanu Herber especially, I mean, he played him as a right winger. I don't really understand what that substitution was about, to be honest, but he's played as a centre-half before, and he's played as a full-back, and he's played as a wing-back. I think he could be quite a decent mobile option to add an additional body into that midfield third. If these two are sitting, I think you're still quite comfortable there. You can have, the ball out with Semedo, Keanu Herber. He could even go beyond, as the Sheffield United centre-halves do. Go beyond Semedo and just drag, players out with him. And then you've got someone like Neto, who hopefully is going to be fit in this space, picking up the ball, and just having a little bit more space to work with. You've got to try and move this team around in some way, shape or form. And that could be the potential avenue for us to do it. If we kind of just revert back to that back three shape again. Obviously, we've got limited options up front. Now, I would be advocating again playing Catrone. He's a penalty box striker, but he just looks a bit more kind of physical and ready to kind of battle against centre halves at this level. And he's got a bit of a derby pedigree. I think he scored some important goals for AC Milan against Inter Milan as well. He seems to have a knack for kind of getting up for big moments. He's feisty. He'll run all day long. And even if it's just an hour, 70 minutes, he could do his job within that, regardless of his fitness levels. If he gets a goal for us, there's no arguments there whatsoever. And then thinking about the options available to us again, Morgan Gibbs White, he's not a winger. He is a number 10. We tried that false 9 kind of thing, but I think he didn't benefit from having someone, as a proper striker to play with. When he was playing at Swansea, he was playing with 2 strikers ahead of him, and I think they kind of, kept the defenders at bay to a certain extent, and he had the freedom of the park to kind of play in all these different areas around them. So I'd like to see him, if he has to play, playing in more of a tucked-in narrow role as part of a front three, and have that licence to kind of come up, pick up the ball in these spaces, while still having players ahead of him. If he's got that ball in that space, you're potentially encouraging a midfielder to go and almost join, if it's Dendonka like we tend to do these days, join in and almost get into the box there. You know, Neto potentially obviously playing quite high. And I think, you know, with the option of still being able to recycle possession around the back and stuff, he could have a bit of a field day in that kind of area. You know, I don't rate too much Jake Livermore as an example of the West Brom midfield. Romain Soares is a good player in possession, but isn't necessarily the one who's going to, you know, get in and do the dirty work. Conor Gallagher seems like a decent player, but, you know, he's almost going to have the option to lose the ball even at times, and he does do it a fair bit. But I just think this is the kind of game, and that's the kind of position where he could actually have an impact, rather than sticking him up, you know, up against two centre halves as a false nine, so to speak, and you know, or even playing him out wide. He's not got the pace to go and run down the wings and beat people like that. So, I mean, it's an idea. I don't know, again, who we've got available to us. There's lots of different potential avenues to go down, and the biggest problem for us is at the moment that we really don't know what our best team is. Even if, you know, it seems obvious that we've only got 12 to 13 proper first team players fit and available to us, you still couldn't pick an absolute guaranteed 11 out of that. So, you know, just thinking outside of the box a little bit, Keanu Herver, he looks promising as a footballer. He's mobile, he's quick. I think he's capable technically and in terms of his athleticism of playing that role, getting up and down, getting on the ball, recovering as well if he needs to. He's got the pace. Semedo's still got that pace as well. And it's still kind of within the framework that Nuno likes to operate in. I don't like coming out with outlandish ideas, and there's almost no point in saying certain things that go on social media when we just know Nuno's not going to operate in that way. This still feels like a bit of a Nuno system, but with a little bit more of an edge to it, and something that, you know, we might prove quite fruitful. But you know, it's going to be a nervy one. I don't think we're going to enjoy Saturday at lunchtime at all, any of us, unless we go out and get a nice early goal. But I think it has to be a high tempo start. Cutrone kind of being key to that as well, as someone who can set the tempo for us, get that work rate in, and really kind of buzz around, and people can kind of feed off that. All being well, Adama Traore is fit, and I think he then goes out to prove that he is the kind of, you know, world-class talent that he can be, and you know, frightens the life out of these West Brom defenders. But yeah, not the most confident going into this one based on the Everton result, but let me know your thoughts, guys, and fingers crossed we get a good result on Saturday.